What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm your host for today, Simon Villanos, aka Coach V, and I'm back at it with some request episodes here. We're going to do some film breakdowns of some seniors that we haven't quite gotten to. We've talked about a lot, probably in the fall, about a lot of these players, but we just have not been able to get to a film breakdown about their game, either just because we haven't gone to it in request, or they just barely missed out on our honorable mentions for our top 5 seniors list, which is the case for a number of these players here. But you know what? Let's go ahead and hop into this and start this talented episode by talking about Jace Bellah, the 5'11", 175-pound quarterback, safety, cornerback from Pueblo South High School. Now, he is committed to Colorado State, CSU, and so congrats to him for his commitment there, and I believe he is going to be used as a DB. Now, whether I know if he's playing corner or safety, honestly, I do not know, and so I'm actually going to go ahead and evaluate him as a safety, because that's what he played mostly this year, and he played a little bit of it in the past couple years as well. Now, before I evaluate him, I do want to say that he did play quarterback for Pueblo South, and he was pretty good. This last season, he definitely went through some injuries, but still threw for 1,148 yards, threw 10 touchdowns, only 2 picks. Also ran 72 times for 588 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. And so those are his offensive stats. Obviously, he's contributing. Defensively, I don't know why it doesn't list how many tackles he had on the season, but did have 3 interceptions. One of those was a pick 6, and also he recovered 4 fumbles, but I know he forced some as well. I'm sure he did, as he is a pretty tough hitter out there. And so there you go. Those are his stats for the season. On his career, he has gotten playing time on varsity since he was a freshman. Really, since he was a sophomore, his freshman year, he had a couple of snaps, nothing too crazy there, but he has been playing since he was a sophomore here on varsity. On his career, let's start with the offensive stats here. 2,002 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, averaging about 80 passing yards a game. He also has had about 8 interceptions, I want to say. Yeah, 8 interceptions on defense, including, some very, very good performances these past couple years, where he's had 3 interceptions this year, 4 interceptions the previous year, and then his sophomore year, he had 7 interceptions. So it should be more than 8. That might be 8 picks that he has thrown, but he had 7 picks his sophomore year, which is really good, and it was against some very good teams like Erie, Lutheran, all of those squads there. And so, he's had a pretty good career. He's had a pretty good career here. The last 2 years kind of hurt him because of injuries the senior year, and then last year it was a pandemic year, so he had maybe half the games he would have had in a normal regular season. And so there you go. You got to keep all that in mind when talking about stats, especially when talking about stats from these last 4 years. But let's go ahead and talk about the things that he does really well. So his highest rating on this rubric here, and by the way, when we evaluate each player, we have 10 categories. We give them a rating 1 to 10, and so just for reference here, 6 to 7 is about average to above average. 8 to 9, that's a pretty wide scale there. But 8 to 9 is basically a 3-star to 4-star rating. That's above average, or really good to, just above great, just below grade. So good to really good on that 8 to 9 scale there. Think 3-star, 4-star in that range. And then 9 to 10, like early 9s, that's like, easily a 4-star, 5-star type of talent in that rating, and then, if you're closer to a 10, then you're like a 5-star right? And we don't give many of those out here. But for Jace Bellah, I gave him a 9.3 when it came to hit power. I think he's one of the hardest hitters, in the entire country for sure. And at this frame, at 5'11", 175, he packs a pretty tough punch. And not just, every now and then he'll catch somebody off guard, but he consistently hits hard. He's a physical football player, no doubt about that. And so at a 9.3, I think that's about on par with a lot of 4 stars around the country at his position. Honestly, just watching him hit is special. You could straight up hammer players over and over again. He's very consistent with this. He's just a physical football player. That is his brand of football. So absolutely love to see that. His next highest rating was his run defendability. I actually gave him a 9 here. He just does a really good job playing the run. I think this is definitely a huge strength of his game, a huge part of his game here. He takes some pride in coming up and stopping the run. We saw him at corner and safety doing this. And, for a DB to do that, that's big time. And, he's just very smart. He fills his gaps well. He strings out plays well. And so, honestly, I'm just not super concerned about this ability here. Like, there's really not too much you could do to get better with this run defendability. I think it's just very, very top tier here. Would like to see him wrap up a little bit more. I think there are times he goes for the big hit rather than wrapping up and making a good form tackle. But other than that, that's just being real nitpicky, and that's more of a consistent, I just want to see him be more consistent wrapping up, and that's never a bad thing. So yeah. After that, the next two highest ratings here that I have for him, before I talk about some areas of improvement, so his top end speed is 40, is listed at a 4.59. I think he might even be a little bit faster, probably in that 4.5, early 4.6 range, but I could really see mid 4.5s, low 4.5s, not quite 4.4, but 4.5 is a pretty good spot to be in. And so for that, I gave him an 8.8 speed rating. I think that's very, very solid. And then for his zone coverage ability, I actually gave him an 8.7. I think he plays his zone very well. He'll bait quarterbacks into throwing into his zone, and either line up the receiver or intercept the ball. And so we see that quite a bit. And then just in general, he does a good job picking up players that come into his zone, and he knows what he's doing for sure. You could see that on the film. And so he's just a very, very disciplined player in his zone. Love to see that. Now, let me talk about some of his lower ratings here. Some of the things, honestly, I think he could improve on. Now, I gave him a 6 when it came to block shedding ability. Honestly, I just didn't really see him block shed a whole ton when looking through his film. Most of the time he's speeding around a blocker, not a defender, but most of the time he's speeding around a blocker and just getting to the ball carrier. He takes really good angles, and so I gotta give him that. And so most of the time he doesn't go and engage a blocker. And so this is a little bit more of a default rating, but I know he's strong enough to block shed and whatnot. I just want to see a little bit more of that I want to see him use his hands, get extensions and just block shed. Right, and so I'm sure there are games where he does do this, but just a lot of the time I just see him. He's just taking really good angles, and he's shooting up in there, and he's just getting to the ball carrier before anybody could get their hands on him. On the next level, he's for sure gonna have to make some sort of contact with blockers. It's faster to go straight through somebody than to go around somebody, and so I just want to see a little bit more of that. And so at a 6, that's not even that bad. It could be better. After that, his next lowest rating is at a 6.4 when it comes to man coverage ability. A part of this is because I just didn't see him in man-to-man a lot, even when looking through all of his film. When he was in man-to-man, the routes were pretty predictable. It wasn't anything crazy like a sluggo or a post corner or something like that. It was pretty predictable routes. It was either a 9 route or a curl or something like that. And so, honestly, my default rating usually is around a 5. I'm giving him a 6.4 because I did see him cover still, and I think he's athletic enough where on this level, on the high school level, his athleticism will bail him out of some situations where he has to play man-to-man because he has such a good recovery speed. And so honestly, I'd just be interested to see how he defends against the entire route tree just as a man-to-man DB. And so if coach asks him to be, kind of a spy on receiver, say, hey, can you go ahead and cover this tight end, running back, receiver, and those players are running the route tree, I wonder how well he does. I really want to see him defend against the whole route tree. And, just do a really good job there. Now, I will acknowledge he does do a really good job in man-to-man against deep plays. Part of that is because he has such good recovery speed, and so, his speed helps him catch up on some of these longer developing plays and make a play on the ball. And so, I am going to acknowledge that. But like I said, I just want to see him against the entire route tree, against receivers running the entire route tree. So, we will see there. And then, last but not least, the next lowest rating was a 6.5. I gave that to his height and frame. He's at 5'11", 170, 175. Now, it's not bad at all as far as talking about just pure frame and height goes, but we do take in factor durability when it comes to talking about height and frame. This is kind of where we talk about durability here. And, some injuries from this year, not playing a full junior year, there's definitely some concerns, I would say, about his durability, if anything. I would probably like to see him put on a little bit more weight. I know he's a hard hitter and all that great stuff. And, he's a really good athlete, but, just looking at his frame, I think he could definitely put on a little bit more weight here so that his body can hold up on the next level, because there's a lot of wear and tear when you're a hard hitter, especially when you're a hard hitter in a smaller frame. And so it hits different when you are hitting on the D1 level, which is what he will be doing and whatnot, playing for CSU. And so I would like to see him put on a little bit more muscle. I really kind of want to see him at the 200-pound playing weight range. I think as a coach, I'd feel comfortable if he was there. If he's playing safety and, just being real physical and making all those tackles, just because I feel like having a little bit extra padding is never a bad thing. If he plays corner, I think 180 is just a fine weight there. But still, I am a little concerned about his durability and his height and frame, not gonna lie. And so that's why it's here at a 6.5. Not horrible, it's still about average, but there are definitely some minor injury concerns to keep in mind if you are a coach. Alright, now let me talk about some of the other ratings I have not talked about yet. Not horrible, not bad, but kind of in the middle here. So, did give him an 8 when it came to his agility, hip fluidity. I think he has decent agility. You see this when he's running and whatnot as a ball carrier, but it could definitely feel better. As a DB, his hips feel a little stiff at times, and there are times it just doesn't get around fast enough, and so I'd like to continue to see that be improved here. It's at an 8. I think it's above average for sure, but could definitely be a little bit better. He could be a little faster in and out of breaks and change those directions a little bit smoother here. As a DB is what I'm trying to say here. Like I said, as a ball carrier, he could definitely juke and do all that great stuff, but it's different movements, obviously from going from ball carrier to DB, and so I just like to see him be a little bit smoother here when it comes to agility, hip fluidity. Now, I did also give him a 7.6 when it came to pass contest consistency. This is just how consistent he is attacking the ball, and then I gave him a 7.5 with ball skills. These kind of go hand in hand. Honestly, I just feel like a lot of the time he's just going for the big hit instead of getting a hand on the ball, instead of trying to undercut the receiver and intercepting it. I just really feel like, there are times where he definitely wants to bang, he definitely wants to hit, and that's not a bad thing. But when it gets in the way of making the bigger play, the better play, and I'm talking about turnovers, interceptions, stopping the play altogether, because on the next level, there's going to be bigger receivers who are used to taking these hits, who may even love taking some hard hits, and so you really got to be disciplined attacking this ball here, man, just really attacking those arms, hitting those hands, and just being aggressive and ripping at it. And so I want to see that more on a consistent basis. I just want to see him consistently attack the ball here, and so that's why he's at a 7.6 for pass contest consistency, and then ball skills he's at around a 7.5. And just to talk about ball skills a little bit more here, he could definitely catch it. I do kind of question his ability to catch like jump balls or, contested passes as well. Because there are times where, he kind of uses his body to catch the ball. There are times. And so I just like to see him continue to work on his hand strength and whatnot. I know he does have a little bit of that ability. I just feel like just looking at this film from last year and his junior year film, I just didn't see that quite enough here. And so I just like to see him continue to develop those hands, and work on catching from different angles as well, especially through contact. Catching through contact is going to be a big thing for him, I feel there. So there you go. Now, I don't think there's anything else. Yeah, I don't think there was anything else I had written down here. I think that was all the categories. And so, altogether, his overall grade is at a 77.8, just outside our top 5 senior list here. I think he is somebody that should have made our honorable mention list. I'm not sure if he did or not. I feel like he was listed at cornerback, and so we might have mentioned him at cornerback instead of safety. And so, I already addressed that. He might play both on the next level. He might play corner on the next level as well. So, there you go. But in general, I think he's a good athlete. I think he's a good athlete. He's fast enough. He could hit. He loves to come up and defend the run. He could obviously cover because of his athleticism. I just think a little bit of an injury-plagued senior season, missing a solid amount of games, definitely hurt his recruiting a little bit. And altogether, like I said, he's a hard-hitting safety who does well in zone. Watching him play zone, he does a nice job of locking up his area. And, he's not confused by a couple different route concepts thrown at him, so that's a good thing. But honestly, for him to really advance his game, I want to see him put on a little bit of weight and show that he could carry that weight well, carry that playing weight well, and not just put it on just to put it on. And so we'll see about that. And then in addition, I just want to see him do a little bit more man-to-man, like I said, attack those passes, attack those hands a little bit better here. But altogether, I do think he's a good athlete. Did go kind of under the radar because of some injuries, and I think some coaches were trying to figure out where he would fit as an athlete on their team. But CSU has figured that out, or at least it looks like they have some sort of idea there, as he will be going there, like I said, playing for CSU up in Fort Collins and whatnot, and I think he's going to contribute pretty well there. Honestly, I am interested in seeing how well he holds up on the next level as far as injuries go and whatnot. But honestly, I just wish him the healthiest college career. That's all we can wish for when it comes to some of these things. As football is football. Some things do happen, and so there you go there. But altogether, just a very good all-around athlete in Jace Bellah, who did it all for the Pueblo South team. Was a very good defender, but honestly, as a quarterback, if he had a couple more years playing quarterback, he might have been a next level quarterback. Just looking at, his speed and some of his throws, his arm power here, if he had a couple more years at quarterback, I definitely could have seen him as potentially next level quarterback, but made the right decision here, and I believe he is going to play DB on this next level for CSU, and I think that's a very good fit for him. I think he could definitely contribute on special teams here a little bit as well, which might help him get on the field sooner rather than later. But there you go, that is the Jace Bellah film breakdown. Alright, now the next player I want to talk about here is another speedster, and that is Eden's senior running back, the 5'7", 160-pound running back, at least that's what's listed here. 5'8", 155-pound running back. That's the most recent list I have here. But I'm talking about Ethan Florez from Eden High School. Played running back for them, was part of 2 of their championship teams. Real quick, let me talk about some stats here. Last year, his junior year, was when, he really took on a pretty big load here. His sophomore year, he contributed as well. Let me start there, actually. His sophomore year, played in 9 games, had 42 carries, 382 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, so very productive as a sophomore. As a junior, took on a little bit of a bigger role at running back. In 8 games, he had 616 carries, 83 carries, so about double what he had from his from his sophomore year, and then had 11 touchdowns. Then this last year, this was really the first full season he played in. He played in all these games here, but played in 12 games, 136 carries, 953 rushing yards, and 9 rushing touchdowns. He also played on defense his junior and senior year. It looks like he had a pretty significant contribution to this tough Eden defense. But his junior year had 62 tackles, 3 tackles for losses. That's pretty solid. His senior year was used a lot on defense, had 91 tackles here and 5 tackles for losses. So just doing a really good job there. Also had 2 interceptions as a senior, playing DB cornerback for a very good Eden squad here. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the things he does really well here. Some of his highest ratings, like I said, we have 10 categories, obviously tailored to running back. I think that's kind of where I see him playing on the next level, if he does choose to play on the next level. And so we have 10 categories, ratings 1 through 10. If you want to hear, a deeper breakdown of how we do this, go ahead and listen to that first segment with Jace Bellah. But let's go ahead and hop into this. The highest rating I gave him was actually an 8.8 when it came to his agility and change of direction. He just has great agility and just a good ability to make people miss. He's shifty, and that makes him very dangerous in space. There's not a lot of film out there, not a lot of huddle film, and I wish there was, because if there was a little highlight reel for him, you'll see just how many times he just shakes people out in the open field and finds openings. Now, I was able to go to like 5 or 6, it feels like, Eden games, so I've seen him play plenty in person, and so these are my notes from seeing him play in person. So I'm just going to throw that out there before I continue, but definitely just very good agility here. He's somebody that is for just real shifty, and that's a good thing, being kind of shorter running back. He can make people miss. He could definitely make people miss. Now, the next highest rating here is a tie between 2 of these. I gave him an 8.7 for speed and footwork. 8.7 for footwork. I said here, he just has really good footwork that allows him to make a lot of sharp cuts and just be an agile ball carrier. This is definitely a plus to his game. Now, honestly, if it wasn't for the great footwork here, he wouldn't have great agility. I think that footwork is really the base of all that, in my opinion, and so it's no surprise that his footwork and agility ratings are very close and pretty high. And so I really just liked his footwork in general. Not only is it fast and quick, but it's precise. It's a very, very precise, very calculated when he, makes his cuts and whatnot. And so it's calculated because he can be, with how good his footwork is. Just throwing that out there. And then speed, I put it at an 8.7. Now, I do not have a 40-yard dash, but I do have some track times, and so his best 100-meter track time was a 11.47 seconds, which is pretty good. Well, I guess his best 100-meter track time is actually 11.41 seconds, but I believe this is April 25th, so this was last week, he ran 11.47, and then on the 15th of April, he ran an 11.41, so he's in that 11.41 to 11.5 range, I would say. I think that is pretty fair here, and so that's pretty good to compare Jace Bellah. I pulled up his track stats as well, but his best 100 meter was 11.75, and Jace Bellah ran a 4.59, and I even think he might be a little bit faster than that, honestly. And so it could be a little debatable. I'm sure there's a little bit of training that goes into it. Florez might be a little bit more focused on training as a track guy. Bellah, he is a little bit more focused on football, as that's what he for sure will be playing on the next level. And so I went ahead and gave Ethan Florez an 8.7. I think his top end speed is pretty good here. He's probably in that 4.5, maybe 4.6 range. There are definitely times times, though, where he is caught from behind. I'm not going to lie. When he hits that open space, there are definitely a couple of times where he is caught from behind. I want to say one of those times, it was Caden Donovan, the safety from Severance, that caught him from behind. But Caden Donovan is a pretty fast guy. He runs about a 4.6, so it's not like the biggest surprise in the world. But, for somebody who is a smaller back, you would kind of wish he was in that 4.5, 4.4 range. Ideally, to play on like the D1 FCS level, but I think still being at that 4.5, maybe 4.6 range, just a step below, that's definitely enough for him to play football on the next level if he chooses to. So there you go. Still very good speed. It still gave him an 8.7. I think he's about a 3-star type of running back when it comes to speed, just pure speed. So yeah. Alright, now let's go ahead and talk about some of his lower ratings here. The lowest rating I actually gave him was a 5 when it comes to blocking. Now, here's the thing. I gave him a 5 when it comes to blocking. 5, like I said, is usually my default grade when I don't see a lot of blocking in general. But I did see him block quite a bit, maybe not quite a bit, but a solid amount of times, Still a little rare, though. He is a willing hitter. I'll give him that. He's a very willing hitter. He's somebody who is not afraid to get physical with you as a running back. And, for somebody of that size, that's definitely admirable. But just because you're a willing hitter doesn't make you the greatest blocker in the world. In general, he's a smaller back. And so, because of his lack of weight and strength, I think that kind of holds him back a little bit. And so, on this level, like on the high school level, and gotta keep in mind, it's a 2A level as well, at best, he will act as an obstacle. Sometimes he will, go ahead and buy his quarterback an extra second or so. But he's not stonewalling anybody when he's when he's blocking somebody. I just don't think that's something he does a lot when I did see him block. And on the next level, I don't necessarily see him as somebody that you could trust as a blocker, because part of it is because he should also be out there as a receiver. He should be a receiving option, and so to use him as a blocker would probably be a mistake, just because he's not the biggest guy. If you want to have a running back who could block, just recruit a bigger dude in general, and I'm sure you could coach them up. But I think he's definitely more of one of those guys that you'd rather have going out for a pass than buying extra time for a pass. And so for that, he's at a 5. He's definitely somebody who's willing to hit. No doubt about that. He could hit, but I wouldn't necessarily count on him to continuously block somebody well throughout a game. I personally would think that's probably a waste of his talents. So there you go. Now, the next lowest rating is a 5.7. I gave that, I graded him a 5.7 on his power and explosiveness. Now, he does have some pop to him. He's definitely more of a speed back, but he's somebody who's not afraid to be physical. He doesn't shy away from physicality at all. As most Eden backs do, they don't shy away from that. But there were definitely times where they were on the goal line, and he just struggled to win some one-on-one matchups where, it's him versus a linebacker, and he just doesn't have enough juice to, just quite truck that linebacker. Honestly, there's a reason why they put in, Ryan Dirksen, Ryder True, or Morgan Trebet in the backfield when they got into the end zone or when they got into the red zone. And it's because they're bigger backs. All those guys are at 200 pounds and up. And so, there were times they put in Florez, but there were definitely times at games that I went to, especially down the stretch of the season, where, they'd sub him out. And they go with the bigger guy here, whether it's Dirksen, True, or Trebet. And so, honestly, that definitely hurts, just some of his touches in general. He probably could have had a couple more touchdowns if he was put in more red zone situations. But even then, there were times where I just saw him struggle to win those one-on-one battles. And, it helps that he had a very good line, throughout his entire career. He has some big boys in front of him pushing, that pile and opening up like very obvious gaps to run through, but I just wouldn't I don't know. It just kind of hurts his power and explosiveness in general. He's just not really a power back. Does have kind of a nice stiff arm, but I think I consider that more of a balance thing than anything. Not quite as much a power, like pure power explosiveness thing. So there you go. And he also is 5'8", 155. I have not seen a listing where he's above 160, personally. So yeah. So those are his 2 lowest ratings. Now let me talk about some of the other things that I haven't talked about here yet, but are kind of in the middle between his highest and lowest ratings. Now, vision, I gave him an 8.4. I think he has pretty solid vision. Does benefit from having a dominant line, especially on this level, that makes running up the middle easy. And, he does have some good guys in Trebet, True, Dirksen, who play that fullback, lead back role. And they do a good job, going out and getting those blocks for him to hit those outside gaps as well. And so, his vision's not bad, but he definitely has help when it comes to blockers. I do think there are times where he bounces the play outside a little bit too much, where he could be working inside. And so for that, I think he's around a 3-star, low 3-star type of guy when it comes to vision in general. I'd be interested in seeing how he holds up, with a worse line, going up against a better defensive competition. So I'm kind of in the middle here about that. So this was a really hard one to grade. So there you go. Yeah, but keeping it going, though, did give him a 7.6 when it came to receiving. I think he's pretty dangerous with the ball in his hands. He'll get a lot of yak yardage. That's yards after catch yardage. He's used on a couple of screens and some basic routes for a running back, but wasn't really throwing the ball a whole lot. Just because Eden, they could do a couple different things. They had a quarterback who could throw it to receivers, and so Eden, they also had receivers as well, like multiple pass catchers. You also had these other backs like Ryder True, Morgan Trebet, Ryan Dirksen, who could also catch, but are bigger dudes as well. And so when it came to catching the ball, he wasn't exactly somebody that got it a whole ton. But when he did, he was definitely dangerous. And so I'm giving him a 7.6 because I just didn't see him run the widest variety of routes. And honestly, I wouldn't exactly be comfortable like moving him to receiver until I see more film of his route running. So yeah, if I was a next level coach, I would consider, just because of his pure athleticism, maybe trying him at like a slot receiver and whatnot. But like I said, I just haven't seen a lot of that receiving film, and so I gave him a pretty modest 7.6. This is still above average, so not bad at all. So yeah. Then moving on here, gave him an 8.4 for balance and body control. I think he's a tough person to tackle because of how low he usually runs. And he has shown the ability to bounce off tacklers and keep it going. I think his balance kind of really brings his game together. He's somebody who I would definitely call more of a speedy, shifty change of pace back, but he does have relatively good balance and body control, which makes up for his strength. And so this also allows him to put a lot of juice on some of these stiff arms and some trucks, because he is just able to get really good leverage because of where his body is and how well he utilizes, his balance and all that great stuff. So this definitely makes him more of a, a little bit more of a workhorse back at times for Eden when they wanted to use him as that, rather than like a, a complimentary type. So he's definitely somebody that could have been a 3-down back for a lot of squads. So just throwing that out there. And then last but not least, I do have the same rating for these last two categories. 7.5, gave him a 7.5 for tackle breaking and acceleration. When it comes to tackle breaking, I think there are times when he hits open space and can make a defender or two miss. Those are more so finesse moves. But then there are also times when he's running it up the middle and he needs to break off just one tackle to break off a long run, and he doesn't quite do it. And so he's a little inconsistent at times when breaking tackles, and so I know he has the ability to, but I think his lack of just raw strength just allows him to get shoestring or arm tackled at times if he's not in the most balanced position. And usually he is, but when he's not, and there are a couple times where he isn't, it's relatively easy to tackle him, So there you go. For that, I gave him a 7.5. This one could be a little bit higher probably, but I think this is valid for the most part. Still above average, so not bad. And then for acceleration, gave him a 7.5 as well. I think it's pretty solid. You could get into his top end speed pretty well, but I think you could definitely work on this, be a little bit more explosive and whatnot. I like his top end speed a lot, so when he does get into his top end speed, he's pretty fast, but acceleration wise, could definitely use a little bit more work. There are some times, like I said, where he didn't quite accelerate fast enough, and that allowed him to get tripped up or tackled and prevented him from making some very big, runs here. And so, there you go. Altogether, gave him a 76.3. This is a pretty good rating, honestly, for a guy that's 5'8", 155. Definitely a little bit more for speed back. We, as a podcast, as evaluators of talent, are definitely harder on smaller running backs. Just because running back in general, it's a pretty... I would say it's a pretty disposable position. You could put receivers at running back and they could do a lot of the same things. Look at Deebo Samuel, and I think that's where a lot of coaches are going towards on that next level. But Ethan Florez here, I think, is definitely somebody that, adds speed to your running game. And I know there are a couple colleges out there that have great power backs, have a great power game, but they need a speed guy. They need a guy who could take it out the backfield and house it. Or, make a couple guys miss and be kind of more of a finesse back to put out there when you absolutely need to throw the ball. And then some of these heavier guys are kind of just, they're just not like exactly fitting into the system that you want to run when you want to pass it a little bit more here. And so I think Ethan Flores would be a great change of pace guy. I think he's probably... at best, a D2 guy. I think to be D1, you have to be a little bit faster, a little bit heavier. He's 5'8", 155. Might even be a little bit lighter than that, to be honest, than you, and a little bit shorter than that. And so that probably hurts him a bit. But no doubt about it, he could ball. And it wasn't like Eden used the heck out of him. He had only 261 career carries, So not too bad, not too bad at all. Relatively low for him. Eden did have a couple of running back by committees, so that kind of helped take the load off of him, and so he has a lot of juice left in the tank. Now, I looked over all his social medias, and he's really not on social media like that. Have been able to find him on Instagram and whatnot. We follow us, we follow him, but nothing about committing to do any sport on the next level. And honestly, I think he might be able to get a track scholarship on the next level. I wonder how that's going for him and whatnot. I'm sure I could have reached out to him, but altogether, just didn't see too much. And so, as far as I'm concerned, he's probably available. And so if there's any teams out there, that are interested in a speed back, I think getting a guy like Ethan Flores, who, has pretty solid balance, has good speed, change of direction, is shifty, I think that'd be a good pickup. Oh, and is also a willing hitter, and so you could get a guy at least for special teams. I think this is a guy that a lot of colleges could potentially use, use and add to their system, either on offense or on special teams, to be completely honest with you. And, if you're a smaller college as well, he could cover it. He could play DB and do a good job. Definitely saw him play cornerback for this championship Eden team, and he did a good job, covering and also hitting. He's not afraid to hit at all, and so you absolutely love to see that. But there you go. That is Ethan Flores out of Eden High School. Honestly, wishing him the best of luck. I know he's a senior and whatnot, and so we'll see where he goes, if anywhere. All right, now speaking about next level running backs, we got Dom Nichols here, man. And Dom, he's a homie. He's definitely part of PMC fam, big fan of the podcast. And, we were big fans of him as well. We've gone to talk to him a number of times throughout this last year, at a couple Junior Buffs games and, some others events as well. And so Dom here, he's a real good dude. And so, honestly, a little surprised that Cody did not do his film breakdown earlier. We've talked about Dom Nichols shows a lot, and we know what kind of player he is, but I guess we never just put out there, a film breakdown. So here it is, let's talk about Dom Nichols here. So Dom, for the majority of his career, played for Pomona, was going to play for Vista Ridge this last fall here for the 2021 season, but because of some things with Chassa, which I don't agree with, and a bunch of other things that we've talked about, and we've defended and critiqued pretty hard. He was not able to play for Vista Ridge, but he was able to catch the last couple of games with Pomona, which he's very thankful to, at least to have been able to play a little bit of his senior year. And so a lot of the film that I'm going off of for this film breakdown will be from his senior year highlights, obviously the games that I went to, because I did go to 2 of his games of this last year with Pomona, and so I'm going off of that. I'm also going off of film from his junior year as well, and so just kind of keep that in mind, but let's go ahead and talk about some of his highest ratings here. Like I said, 10 categories. We give him a rating 1 to 10. If you want to listen to a deeper breakdown of how we do our film breakdowns, go ahead and listen to that first segment of this episode with Jace Bellah, where I talk about it. But his highest ratings were actually tied here. I gave him a 9 in 2 different categories. Both of those, are tied kind of really close together, and so I gave him a 9 in footwork and agility and change of direction. He just has really fast feet with precise movements. He makes very sharp cuts and doesn't lose speed. He has the ability to shake some defenders out of their cleats, and honestly, I think he has elite footwork, and that's why he's so elusive. And so that's a big part of his game. Now, when it comes to agility, change of directions, he has the ability to pull a couple cuts in a row off together and then string a couple of moves together on top of that without losing speed. Now, to string a bunch of moves together without losing speed and, still being shifty and all that stuff, that requires good agility and footwork. You can't have one without the other, honestly. And so, this allows him to set up blocks really well and just reach the next level plus more on a consistent basis. And so that's a really big part of his game, and so that's why he's at a 9 here. Now, his next highest rating is an 8.9. Gave him that in receiving. Honestly, I would feel pretty comfortable putting him at receiver, and he will be playing on the next level here, I believe, for Colorado Mesa, and I don't know what he's going to play, whether it's receiver, running back, DB, but I would be comfortable playing him at receiver. He has excellent ball skills, has ran a variety of routes. Some of that is thanks to watching his Team Full Gorilla film, which allowed him to run a ton of routes, so I love to see that. And so there you go. Also was able to see his ball skills just watching him play safety, which is a pretty good safety. Honestly, the only thing I would add on to here that I would like to see him, this is just me being nitpicky, is just his releases, how he goes up against press. I did watch all his Team Full Gorilla filming, so I'm sure I could watch some of that there, but in pads, I would just like to see a little bit more of these releases here, see how he fends off that press, how he gets separation, and so that's really my only critique when it comes to him as a receiver. But other than that, I think he's a very good receiver at running back, so I absolutely love that. Now, these next couple ratings are all kind of clumped together here, and so I'll actually talk about the next highest rating here at 8.8. That's what I gave him in 2 categories, and then I'll move on and talk about some things he could work on. But I'll talk about every category though, so no worries. So I did give him an 8.8 in tackle breaking and acceleration. In tackle breaking, he could definitely break tackles and work his way to the next level. His agility and footwork allows him to shake defenders in open space, where he is the most dangerous, honestly, and he barely loses speed, like I said, when he's stringing together these cuts and moves. And so, and as a tackle breaker, he is very, very elusive, and it's not like he's a weak dude at all. He's a pretty strong guy, you know, at his size, and so he could definitely shed a couple blocks, especially when he's running and hitting that full speed. I mean, he could shed a number of blocks here. Or sorry, not blocks. He could definitely shed a number of tackles. That's what I meant to say. When he's hitting that full speed and he's just out in open field. So he's not like a weaker dude at all, you know, not like just a pure speed back. He definitely has a little bit of power to him. So there you go. But we'll talk about that later. Now, acceleration also gave him an 8.8. I think he gets into his top end speed relatively fast here. The number of times I have seen him play, I mean, they're insane, you know, like he gets into his top end speed very, very well, pretty smoothly. And honestly, there's some plays on his reel where he just comes to a complete stop. And then he gets to his top end speed, you know, going from 0 to 100 in like a second or two, and just shoots out of the hole out of nowhere. And that is definitely special. You know, look up some of these plays, because there are just some plays where he comes to a complete stop and then just gets to his top end speed so quickly. And you love to see that. That's what makes him dangerous. You see this a little bit on some of his special teams plays as well. That's where you see some of this acceleration. So yeah. Now, let me go ahead and talk about some areas of improvement, some things that I kind of have him rated a little bit lower here. His lowest rating was a 6. That was for blocking. I said he's willing to hit and block. His form could definitely use some work, but honestly, he's not asked to block a lot, and I wouldn't ask him to block a lot on the next level. You know, just because I would put him at a receiver. You know, I'd rather have him at receiver than blocking, to be honest with you. And so, with this ability to catch, I just really wouldn't worry about this too much. But for now, I think it's at a 6. Like I said, he's willing to get physical. He's willing to hit. He could definitely use a little bit more work getting those hands inside and making sure he consistently gets the leverage there. And so, blocking could definitely use a little bit of work here, but not too bad. Still a 6, though. And then after that, his next lowest rating is actually an 8. So, this is really good, honestly. And I gave him an 8 when it came to power and explosiveness. He's probably not going to consistently run over somebody. Like, if you give him the ball 4 out of 4 times, you know, on the goal line, I wouldn't say that he consistently runs over a linebacker 4 out of 4 times on the goal line. You know, but at 5'11", 175, maybe a little bit bigger than that, to be honest with you, he's strong, you know, for this size. He could outmuscle some players in 1v1, you know, but you could definitely put on a little bit more weight. And in fact, I'd like to see him kind of get to a playing weight of about 200 pounds, which I feel like is a good spot to be at, where he could still maintain his speed, maybe even push 210, but I think 200 pounds is kind of that sweet spot. And so this is just about where his strength is. You know, an 8 is not bad. That's above average for sure. That's a 3-star rating at least, you know, low 3-star rating at least. And so I'd be pretty happy with this rating, but he could definitely get a little bit stronger. I think he has the frame to put on a little bit more muscle, a couple more pounds here, and so he could afford it. But there you go. That is his, well, those are his lowest grades, honestly. Now, let me talk about everything else that I just haven't been able to talk about yet here. So, there are a couple grades where I did give him an 8.7. That is in speed, balance, body control, and vision. So let me go ahead and talk about that right now. When it comes to vision, I think he sees into the next level very well. You could tell as his moves set up the next opening in those defenses that he does see very well, because he does have the ability to do that. Does a nice job maneuvering around on inside runs as well. You know, he reads his blocks very well. You know, that's something that I really like about his game. You know, he's a very, very efficient runner, and so that's why I gave him an 8.7 for that. You know, around a 3-star, 4-star type of guy. Speed, I think he's probably faster than, you know, than any 40 time or one of those metrics would say. You know, now I don't have a current 40 time on hand, but, you know, just watch his special teams plays, right? You can see his top end speed there. I think he's probably a low 4.5 guy, maybe 4.6, you know, but I would say consistently he's a low 4.5, but not quite a 4.4 type of guy. And so for that, he's around an 8.7, 8.8 type of range here. You know, I'm going with an 8.7 right here, just to be safe, just to be a little tough here, not gonna lie. So there you go. And then balanced body control, like I said, same rating, 8.7. He's tough to bring down, and a lot of that is because he is, like, when he's low, he is unstoppable. You know, his balance allows him to be in and out of cuts smoothly while also bouncing off some tacklers. And so, you know, it's just very good. Now, there are times where I feel like he runs a little tall, you know, just a little tall. And so that's why he's at an 8.7. And this is mostly because of consistency. Because I feel like there are just times where, you know, he gets upright a little bit too fast, where you should be running a little bit lower here. At times. And so I'd just like to see a little bit more consistency here. That's why it's not super, super high. And so there you go. I think that's pretty much it here. I've talked about all the categories here. And so overall, his overall grade, adding all of these grades up here, is an 84.6. Now, if he played the amount of games that we have required to make our top 5 senior list, for me, he would have ranked out as about the second best running back in the state. There would have been an argument for him to be, you know, above Bryce Vaz, but I think Bryce is just a little bit higher than him. He's a little bit faster, but the argument is definitely there. And going into this season, I mean, well, last year, going into this 2021 season, we really expected Dom to be one of the top backs in the state, you know, up there with the Bryce Vaz's, Mason Quanch, Sawchucks of the world. You know, we felt like he was that guy because as a receiver, he was easily one of the best, you know, receiving running backs in the entire state. Maybe the best receiving running back in the entire state, potentially. But, you know, because of the lack of games, we couldn't quite put him up there. Just, you know, just for the same reason why we couldn't put, Grant Page up there for safeties, because he did tear his ACL and only played a handful of games. And so he would have been one of the top guys in the entire state if he was allowed to play for Vista Ridge. And honestly, I do believe this. If he played for Vista Ridge, they probably would have made it to state, honestly. But sadly, he just had a very short season. You know, just wasn't as much running back for him as I'd like to personally see. And so his offers just weren't quite there for a long time. And so I'm actually really happy that he got offered by Colorado Mesa, and he's committed to play at Colorado Mesa, because legitimately they got a D1 guy over there. I think Dom Nichols is easily a D1 guy. You know, he's somebody who could have played, you know, probably some FBS football, for sure FCS football. He could have been a workhorse for a lot of FCS teams. But, you know, he's at Colorado Mesa. He's going to make the best out of it. He's going to light it up. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if Colorado Mesa makes a run at the national championship. Not only because of Dom, but because of a lot of the players that they're recruiting over there as well. But adding a guy like Dom Nichols, who is not only an excellent running back, but in my opinion is a very good safety as well, I mean, that's a great thing to have. You know, he's going to be a star over there for sure. And so, all the love to Dom, man. He's a good dude. You know, love his game. He works really hard. And honestly, he's somebody that we're rooting for here on the podcast, you know, as he is part of PMC fam. And just would love to see him, you know, succeed for Mesa and go earn himself a ring. Go earn himself more respect. More respect that, honestly, he deserved this last year than he got from Chassa, to be honest with you. And Chassa, you know, they're corrupt. They do their thing. And so, yeah, I'm not going to get all into it. You know, we'll leave that for the end of the year recap or whatever we do when we do get to talk about Chassa. I'll take my shots at them there. But, you know, they know what they did. And regardless, you know, Dom, he's on to much better things. He's going to be a star over at Mesa. And honestly, super excited to watch him play some college ball. Hoping to make it out to a game here soon. So yeah. But let's go ahead and keep this thing going here and talk about two players from the Classical Academy, TCA, in Colorado Springs. That is my alma mater. Graduated from there. I feel like I have to say that every time I talk about TCA. And you'll see why. But let's actually start with the receiver here, Matt Segovia here. He is committed to play on the next level. We'll talk about that later, but let me go ahead and talk about his game here. I won't talk about his stats or any of that stuff just yet. I just want to talk about his game. You know, just from what I've seen in person, you know, and what I've seen looking through his film here. This is a guy whose film breakdown is a very, very long overdue. I'm a big fan of his game. I think he's a very fun receiver to watch, honestly. And he is for sure an honorable mention on our top 5 senior receivers list. I think he would have just finished outside, potentially. But even then, he just didn't quite have some of the production here, and so Cody would have been a lot harder on some of these grades here based off of production and stats. But I know what this kid could do because I've seen him play in person. You know, I'm from TCA, so it's not like I haven't heard of this dude before. I've known about him for at least 3 or 4 years here. So let's go ahead and hop into this and talk about his game. Starting with this highest ratings here, and the highest rating I gave him was an 8.9, and that was for his elusiveness and agility. He's quick enough to make multiple people miss, and he's just a pure playmaker with the ball in his hands. You know, when the ball is in his hands, he is a yak king, a yards after catch king. He'll get a lot of yards after the catch. You know, he will go to work, make a lot of people miss. He has a nice little bag here. You know, he's just a very, very shifty receiver, and so does a lot with the ball in his hands. You know, absolutely love that, and so that's why he's getting an 8.9 for elusiveness and agility. Now his next highest rating is actually his speed. Gave him an 8.7. Now I don't have a 40 yard dash on time, but I think he's probably a 4.5 to 4.6 guy. Type of guy. I feel like I've said that about a lot of these players, you know, when it came to Florez, Nichols, Jace Bellah, but I think they're all kind of in the same, like, speed range here. They're for sure above average. They're in the very good range here at 8.7, so that's about a 3-star, high 3-star, 4-star type of guy here. I don't think he's a 4.4 type of guy, I'm just going to be honest with you, but I could definitely see 4.5, 4.6 for sure, which is pretty good, you know. That's why he's getting an 8.7 for that. And then his third highest rating was actually an 8.6, which I gave him in field awareness and vision. So his vision's, I mean, like, it really shows when he gets the ball in his hands on some of these sweeps, as TCA did give him the ball a lot on some jet sweeps here, and it was a pretty good idea because he made the most out of it. You know, his vision really showed when he just got the ball in his hands and he was able to maneuver and, you know, use his blocks well and, you know, get downfield, and he just has a very good awareness and vision, and so that's absolutely what I like to see here. So there you go. Now, actually, before I talk about some areas of improvement / some of his lower ratings here, I lied. You know, his highest rating was actually a 9, which I gave him blocking. And so let me talk about this real quick here, because I think for a receiver, he's a really good blocker. You know, he has blocking film on his highlight reels, and I have seen him block in person, and he just does a really good job. Very fundamentally sound, you know, gets good leverage, and once he gets those hands on the inside of these DBs, he manhandles them. You know, and there's a reason why Cade Palmer was able to break off a couple of these big plays at running back, and it's because Segovia's out here sealing off DBs, allowing Palmer to go ahead and rip off some of these huge plays here. And so I really like his blocking at receiver. He might have been the best blocking receiver in this class, I would say. Definitely out of this top 5 receiving class, he would have been one of the best ones because he just did a good job consistently, and so gotta give him a lot of props for that. Now, let's talk about areas of improvements / his lower ratings here. So I did give him a 7.3. That was his lowest rating for separation and release. Now, here's the thing. He gets good separation down the line on a lot of his routes, so like as his routes progress, he gets really good separation, but I am giving him a 7.3 just because I didn't really see him get pressed a lot, you know, and use a couple different releases where he did get pressed, and just didn't see him utilize releases to get a step on those DBs. Now the times I did see him get pressed, he struggled just a little bit here. And so honestly, I'd be really interested to see what releases are in his bag when he gets pressed by a long DB, like a 6'2", 6'3" type of guy. So that's a pretty big critique I have. I just didn't see a lot of releases, and so that's something that I'm kind of gonna go ahead and hold against him here. But he does get good separation because of his speed. There's no doubt about that. It's pretty solid, honestly. His next lowest rating was a 7.4 though, and that went to route running. Honestly, I feel like there were times where he was just rounding out a lot of his routes. And I know he could run crisper routes, and really sell some of these routes and really throw off these DBs, but it just felt like a lot of the time where he's about to make a big play, he is definitely rounding out some routes, and they're not as crisp as they could be, and so his athleticism, it allows him to get a lot of separation, more so than his craftiness as a route runner. I think if he continues to develop his route running, really just get consistent with running crispy routes here, running good routes that, will allow DBs to second guess themselves, then that could further polish his game here. So there you go here. But there you go. Those were his two lowest ratings. Now let me talk about some of the things that are kind of in the middle here that I haven't necessarily talked about yet. And so I gave him a 7.9 when it came to verticality and jump ball. So he could jump, for sure. He could go up and be physical and get the ball like he has the ability. But I just didn't see this on a consistent basis. Part of that is because they didn't throw many balls where he had to win a one-on-one matchup outside of him just winning with his speed, and he already has like 10 yards on a DB. And so there are just a lot of times where, he just had those 10 yards on the DB and was wide open and didn't have to win a contested catch. And so he just really didn't get a lot of those opportunities to showcase this. This grade could even be a little lower, honestly, because of those lack of opportunities, but I know he can do it. And so I honestly would have liked to see more red zone catching attempts to properly evaluate this, but I'm gonna be pretty generous here and give him a 7.9. This is a pretty generous rating. It probably should be lowered closer to a 6 or so, but I know he could do it. And I have seen him in some situations go up and get it, but he just wasn't, unfortunately, taking advantage of in some of those sitches. So that's just tough, His next lowest rating, gave him an 8.2 when it came to route tree. I feel like his route tree was a little basic, a little limited at times, They got him the ball a lot on end around sweeps, that dominated a lot of his touches when he did get the ball. And then other than that, he was getting thrown to as a receiver catching a lot of, just short screen type of route. So he's not really running route. He's just kind of standing there or taking a couple steps and then, going. And so between those sweep routes and a lot of those screen routes, he didn't really run a wide variety. Those were the two things that I realized I just said sweep routes. Sweep plays and screen routes, those were the plays they called for him, and so that kind of prevented him from running pretty much everything else. I think the next common route was just a straight 9 route, so he's just running deep, a vertical route here. And so I would have liked to see him run some sluggo routes or stop and go routes, run the slant more, run outs more, curls, post routes, corner post routes. I would have liked to see, a wider variety there, but it felt like he was just very, very limited to screens, slants, and just straight goes, 9 routes. And that's tough, and so I'm going to be a little generous here and give him an 8.2 for that. I think, honestly, it could be a little bit lower. Honestly, it could definitely be a little bit lower here, but it's not like I didn't see him run some of these other routes at all. It's just like, it was just very rare when he did, and was passed to. So there you go. But 8.2 for route tree. I think that's about fair. Just didn't run the widest variety, but I did see a couple of these routes every now and then. It was just very rare, it felt. Now I also gave him gave him an 8.3 when it came to body control. Outside of eluding defenders and getting in work in space, he just does not have a lot of opportunities to show off his body control as a pass catcher. I mean, showing off his body control when catching the ball. Because like I said, wasn't really put in a lot of situations where, he had to win a one-on-one matchup or anything like that. Most of the time, he's just completely wide open and he's catching the ball. And so I know he does have good body control, and so that's why he has an 8.3, because of his ability to elude defenders and, make a lot happen after the catch, and so that's why it's here. But other than that, I just can't give him a higher rating than this because of just the lack of looks I saw as a pass catcher. And so, there you go. Now, there are times where he does flash good body control, when, the pass is inaccurate and he goes up and gets it. And so he does a good job there, but I just don't see it enough on a consistent basis to really feel comfortable giving it a higher rating than an 8.3, which, is a little generous. I think if Cody was grading Segovia here, he would definitely give him maybe something in the 6s or 7 here. Alright, now the last category I want to talk about is hands ball skills. Gave him an 8.4. Honestly, he has a habit of catching with his body at times. Not even really at times. It happens quite a bit. Especially when he's running routes and is anticipating getting hit. He uses his body to shield the catch, but it definitely turns into him using his body to catch. And so altogether, I'd just like to see him extend and go get the ball a little bit more here. Just use your hands, I just feel like I didn't see enough of that. Like, not to say that he didn't use his hands at all, but the number of times where he used his body to catch the ball, I just did not like. And I'm sure college coaches don't like that either, because if I'm seeing it, then they definitely have seen it. And so his rating is not higher because he just uses his body to catch more than I'd like, honestly. But still pretty good. He still has an 8.4 when it comes to hands here. But I'm curious to see, if he was thrown in, if he was thrown the ball more when he was contested or when somebody was contesting the catch in a 50-50 situation, how well his hands rating would be, because that kind of affects it as well, so there you go. But altogether, his final grade is an 82.7. In my opinion, he was a low 3-star talent, but he just did not get enough opportunities to really showcase his talents. Now, let me talk about Let me go ahead and talk about some of his stats here, because an 82.7 is pretty good. It would have probably been enough to actually make our top 5 senior list here. But honestly, Cody was not high on him at all. Cody was a lot lower on him. And so that's why he wasn't even really in that consideration for a top 5 senior list, if I'm being completely honest with you. And I think those reasons are valid. Like, I don't disagree with him at all. Because I think, honestly, production was the thing that kept him off our top 5 list. And is probably what kept a lot of colleges away if I'm recruiting him, because I do think he's a very talented dude. But on the season, he had 18 rushes for 248 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. For a receiver, that's pretty good, But he only caught 19 receptions for 295 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. So in total, all season, he had 37 touches. And TCA also played 2 playoff games. So you got to keep that in mind as well. So in a season where you had 2 playoff games as well, he only had 37 touches. Now here's where reality is going to hit just a little bit hard here. But for somebody who lives in a state like Colorado, who honestly colleges don't really respect. D1 colleges don't respect Colorado talent because of some of the things these coaches do here. I'm just going to be honest with you. But because of that, he's in a state that not a lot of colleges really respect, even though there's talent here. And he goes to a school that is not well known for football outside of its kickers. Shout out to the Carlson brothers. He probably needed at least, and I'm talking minimum, 50 touches as a senior to get more, to get noticed more. 37 touches is pretty bad. I'm not going to lie. That is low. When I'm looking at some of the, go ahead and go to 24/7. look at the 2-star and 3-star guys that are kind of, in his rating. There are not many guys there that got the ball under 50 times that are a 2-star and 3-stars that are not from a big school. I did see a Bishop Gorman kid who was under 50 touches, but he's from Bishop Gorman. He's gonna get the benefit of the doubt because Bishop Gorman is a legit powerhouse. They're like the Cherry Creek of Nevada. Other than that, everyone that's ranked at a 3-star had more touches than Segovia here, and had more yards as well. He only had about 600 yards. That's playing in 2 playoff games, keep that in mind. And only 10 total touchdowns. In an ideal world where, people know how to coach, he would have had at least 10 receiving touchdowns, and then at least 5 rushing touchdowns. So he's pretty close. Like 4 is pretty good, for a receiver here. I'm not even going to lie. But he should have had at least 10 receiving touchdowns. To only have 19 receptions, and hey, listen to this. On 19 receptions, he had 6 receiving touchdowns. So that means 1 out of 3 times he is scoring. Just 1 out of 3 times he is scoring. Think about that for a second. Maybe you should get him the ball more if he is scoring 1 out of 3 times. Or made more of an effort to get him the ball more, to be honest with you. Because I honestly feel like TCA did not. And so for that, he is going to go to Fort Hays, which is a very good D2, not going to lie. Fort Hays, they care about their football out there. They have a good fan base, so he's going to be loved on a lot. He's going to be developed, and on that D2 level, or at least I believe it's a D2 level, he's going to be able to ball out quite a bit with that squad, who's going to get an absolute steal in Matthew Segovia here. A guy who I feel like is just like, awesome athlete, and is somebody that could have made our top 5 senior list, but because of production, it's hard to put him above some of these other guys that we have ahead of him, like a Blake Haggerty, who had more touches than him, but is arguably, in my opinion, is arguably less talented. So, there you go. I hate to say it, but, he's Segovia. Well, I don't hate to say it. Segovia, he's a very talented dude, man. If you watched some TCA games, you were entertained. Number 1 by Cade Palmer, who's a legit D1 back going to play for Air Force. But then you got guys like Segovia here who are very good number 2 options. On a lot of teams around the state, he would have been a number 1, offensive option. On a lot of teams, he would have been a number 1 offensive option. If he played for Palmer Ridge, he would have been up there. I would say if he played for, Pine Creek, he would have been up there, but they run the ball too much than I'd like. So if he played for Vista Ridge, he probably would have been up there. But sadly, he's he's just a really good receiver who I felt like could have went D1, probably FCS, maybe lower group of 5, FBS. I could have seen that for sure here. But, I legit felt like he was a D1 talent that will be going D2. Now, nothing against D2. You could still go to the pros on D2. You're still getting, a scholarship and an education going D2, but just keep it in mind, he's a D1 guy, going D2. Definitely, at least according to my grades here, probably a low 3-star, maybe even 2-star guy if you want to throw in that TCA is not well known, which when it comes to ranking, sometimes that's what it is. Doesn't come from a well-known school, he's probably a 2-star guy. And that's just the politics of that, but we won't get too much into that on this film breakdown. So there you go, 82.7 for Matt Segovia. I think he's just a great player altogether, not used a whole lot, so he'll be fresh going into college. He could be used as a running back even on the next level. I could see some of that, maybe, like a change of pace, like receiving type of back, or he'll be a receiver on the next level. Who knows? We'll see. But altogether, Fort Hays, they are getting a heck of an athlete, and that's Segovia from TCA. So yeah, but let's keep this thing going, and let's go ahead and talk about the last TCA player and the last player on this film. On this film breakdown episode here. All right, so the last player that we're gonna talk about on this episode is Sam Guilez, the quarterback from TCA, 6 foot, 165. Actually, I have him at 170 about, so I think he's a little bit heavier than that, honestly. But that's not the point here. Let's go ahead and get into his film breakdown and talk about some of the things that makes him great, starting with some of his highest ratings here. So the highest rating I gave him was a 9, and that was for arm power. Watching Sam play, and I've known this kid for a minute now, just mind you, I've pretty much known him since he was in middle school. But just watching him play, watching him develop, I mean, especially watching this year as well, you know, he just has a great natural ability to flick his wrist, and the ball kind of just jumps out of his hands. That's how good his arm power is. Now, he does have good mechanics. Generally, you know, he uses his body and abs well to, you know, really engage all that and use his body as a whole to propel this ball forward. But just in general, he has very good arm power. I think it is, I mean, he's not like struggling to push it downfield at all. And so that's why he's getting a 9 for arm power. And this is pretty rare. I don't give a lot of quarterbacks 9s. I'm usually pretty picky, but honestly, I just like the way the ball kind of jumps out of his hands here. And it just looks effortless, but I mean, it gets downfield and it gets there, and he could fit into some pretty tight spots as well. So there you go. His second highest rating was an 8.8. I gave him an 8.8 in 2 categories. One of them was pocket awareness. I think he does a very good job sensing pressure, and he knows what the clock is in his head, you know, what that pass rush clock is, and he does what he needs to do to buy himself more time as suited. And so really love his awareness out there. He just does a really good job of sensing that and not eating too many sacks, to be honest with you. So absolutely love that. Absolutely love his pocket awareness. The other 8.8 I gave him in overall mechanics and fluidity. I'm going to be honest with you, this probably could have been a lot higher because I feel like his throwing motion is just very natural, you know, very smooth, you know, but I'm going to be real. There are definitely times where I feel like he is overcompensating or is visibly aiming the ball, you know, and that affects his mechanics, like, altogether. And so I think the consistency when it comes to his mechanics could definitely vary at times and get worse as pressure does increase in games. This is just something I've noticed, you know, and so this honestly might be more of a mental thing, but honestly I just noticed he's a little bit more jumpy, and that just really hurts his mechanics, especially after he's missed a couple throws in a row. And so, you know, when his mechanics are kind of all over the place, that affects his accuracy and timing as the game kind of progresses. And so that might, like I said, that might just be a mental thing, but, you know, his mechanics definitely slip up at times, despite you know, him having a very fluid throwing motion and doing a good job engaging, you know, his hips, his abs, all that stuff when throwing the ball, and his lower body, you know. And so a little bit of a red flag, but altogether, I mean, you're not going to have to teach this dude how to throw the ball. You know, he could throw it. You know, I think he could definitely throw it. He's a very smooth passer. He doesn't have like a broken like throwing motion at all, but I think the consistency of his mechanics is why it's at an 8.8 and not higher, because it honestly could be a 9.3, 9.4. And so that's a pretty big drop here, I'm not gonna lie, but it's why it's here at an 8.8. And even then it might be a little generous, to be honest with you. So there you go. Now let me go ahead and talk about some areas of improvements, because I'm just gonna be honest, he does have a couple here. The lowest rating I gave him was a 4. And I gave him a 4 for his timing on throws, and honestly, his timing is the biggest concern in his game in my opinion. He very noticeably struggled with throwing routes that require timing, and I'm talking routes like slant routes, out routes, even on some deep throws where it's like he's just throwing a 9 ball, he's just throwing it deep, you know, his timing is just off sometimes. Like, he will just straight up overthrow somebody, or he will straight up underthrow somebody, you know, because his timing is just not there. And, you know, there are just times where he just doesn't even give his receivers a chance to make a play on the ball on some of these deep throws. And so I'm really concerned about it. Timing is a really big part of playing on the next level. If you don't have timing in your throws, then, I mean, it's hard for a lot of quarterbacks, it's hard for a lot of teams to play with a quarterback with bad timing, you know, because it's like they don't have time to go ahead and teach their quarterback timing and whatnot and give them the reps so that they do get good with timing. That's kind of a personal problem when it comes to quarterbacks, honestly. And so this is a very, very critical grade here at 4. I'm usually not this tough on quarterbacks, but I've seen Sam play enough where the timing, honestly, I've given him a lot of chances, a lot of chances to work on his timing, and the part of this is also getting opportunities to throw the ball and throw some of these timing routes, and it's just not there. There are times where his timing looks absolutely atrocious. I'm not even gonna lie. And then there are times where his timing looks really good. He'll hit some slant routes in stride and do a good job. Hit some deep routes in stride and do a good job. But honestly, consistency is everything with timing, and so that's why it is this low here. So there you go. A 4, that's the lowest grade he got here. Now the next lowest grade actually goes to decision making, which I gave him a 6.5. And look, this is actually not, I wouldn't really actually call this something that's his fault when it comes to decision making. I think this is more of a system thing. And here's what I mean by that. And I don't usually make this excuse saying, oh, it's a system thing why this player isn't good at something. But this is definitely one of those opportunities here where I gotta talk on it. And so at a 6.5, honestly, TCA did not really ask him to make complicated or even multiple reads on some of these passing plays. Most of the time, I'm just going to be 100% real with you. A lot of these throws look like one-read throws with the intention of exploiting a mismatch, which I get. You have athletes over there. Segovia, he is pretty much a mismatch with everyone on the 2A level here in Colorado. Even on other levels, he would be a mismatch, to be honest with you. And so most of the time I was looking for Segovia, but you do have that other receiver out there, Johnson, I want to say, who made some really nice plays as well, who's also a mismatch in his own right. He's a good athlete too. And so a lot of the time, it was really just him looking for one of those receivers and then throwing to it. I didn't really see him really read too much of a defense and whatnot, and go from, from look to look here, go from read to read here, and that's concerning, and that's not really his fault. I mean, a lot of the plays are just designed that way, like you have Segovia running his route, and then maybe 2 other guys, but one of those guys is a check down, and then the other one is really only running his route to space out the field evenly so that Segovia gets open. And that's not good play calling, I'm going to be honest with you. And because of that, TCA just did not challenge Sam as well as they could have here. I think they leaned back on the running game a little bit too much, so they didn't feel like they needed to challenge Sam here. But that kind of hurt him, because honestly, they just did not give him a lot of complicated throws or route concepts to work with and throw. And they knew that they would need to do this, run more complicated route concepts and get him comfortable with that stuff in order to make another run back, just to get back to state. And, honestly, you got to be even a level above that to even think about winning state. They knew they had to do that because you have a team in Eden who's going to win a lot of these mismatches that you think you have, honestly, but you really don't. So because of that, I just really feel like TCA did not prepare him right there, and so I really can't give him a higher rating just because I didn't see him run complicated plays. So for that, he gets a 6.5. That's about average. Pretty generous if you had me. It could even be a 5 or a 4, honest with you, but I mean, he only threw 3 or 4 interceptions, I want to say. So can't really hack at this decision-making grade because he did make too many turnovers, which I'm going to give him credit for. But also, they were very simple plays that I were watching. I could pretty much diagnose every single play that TCA called out there whenever I went and watched a game. And I watched multiple games. Remember, I'm an alumni, so I guess not alumni because I'm not multiple people, but I'm an alum, so I've went to a couple of TCA games, and so there you go. But that's over with. I mean, there really wasn't too much he could have done there. If he was in a different system, like if he was with Manitou Springs, I know they do a good job of calling really good plays there, stacking their plays, complicated plays, next level plays. Then I think he would have really maybe succeeded, done a better job, and making actual decisions. But I feel like he was definitely protected more than he should have been here with decision making. So there you go. And then his next lowest grade after that is a 7 here, and that goes to his arm accuracy. I think his arm accuracy is a solid 7. Honestly, if I only looked at the highlights and did not go to any games in person, did not ask any other people how some of these games went, if I only looked at the highlights, I would not know how bad his consistency is with accuracy. Because honestly, it's pretty bad at times, Now, look, I'm going to give him credit because it is at a 7. That's above average. That's pretty solid, There are times where he flashes fantastic pinpoint accuracy, threads the needle, throws a beautiful ball. There are times like that, And then there are times like in the 7th game where, routes are open, 7s, to give them credit, are leaving some of these routes open, partially because they don't think he could throw it, and partially because they're okay with allowing a short throw. And he's just not able to hit it. Like, he's not able to hit a slant route or a swing route or a hitch route, And so the highs and lows of his game are scary, especially when you see in some of these big games, his accuracy just is not good at all, honestly. And part of me does think, is this a mental thing? Is he getting into his own head? Is he letting his mechanics slip because he's just trying to aim the ball? A lot of things could go into that, but, just his accuracy could be really bad at times, or really good, like I said, very high highs, but very low lows, and the reason it's at a 7 is because of consistency, and I feel like this is kind of a good rating to go at, which is kind of in the middle. It's at a 7. I think that's a very fair grade here. So there you go. Now let me talk about some of the other things that I haven't talked about yet, some of the other categories I haven't talked about yet. Scramble ability, gave him a 7.8. He's an athletic quarterback, can definitely make defenders miss and scramble a bit. He's agile enough to make defenders miss. I think that's something that I want to kind of emphasize here. He has very, very good agility, for a quarterback, and so I really like that. And I think on the next level, he could probably be a contributor to the run game. I would be concerned about how much you do run him, though, because of his frame. And so I probably wouldn't run him too much. Plus, he's a quarterback. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But he could definitely scramble a bit and be a contributor to the run game. Not only on this level, but for sure on the next level. And so there you go. I gave him a 7.8 for that. Maybe not like, the fastest top-end speed guy, but definitely shifty. So there you go. Speaking of 7.8, also gave him that for his frame and size. 6 foot 170, not too bad. That's on par with where I'm at with a lot of other quarterbacks. So if you want to check out other quarterback film breakdowns, you could do that for yourself. So there you go there. Gave him a 7.5 for throwing the run ability. He has shown the ability to make some excellent throws on the runs. I'm remembering a specific play here against Harrison where he rolled out right, and I remember because he was on my side of the field here, but he rolled out right, and he threw an absolute dime to, I want to say it was Johnson. I don't think it was Segovia, who, I mean, he had to step on his defenders, but he also had the safety closing in. And Samir, he just threw a perfect ball, a beautiful one on the run. And so that one is forever imprinted in my memory. But the consistency part is the thing that hurts him the most. First off, he doesn't roll out and throw on the run a lot. The times he does, he's hitting checkdowns, and he does a solid job. But consistency-wise, it just needs some work, as do most of his passing things here. Consistency is just a really big deal here. So yeah. Did give him an 8, though, for pocket movement. I think this is a very underrated part of his game. Does a nice job, usually climbing the pocket and keeping his eyes downfield. I do think there are times, though, his mechanics become a little off when he is climbing the pocket. and he does not get his base right before he delivers a throw. He's still climbing a little bit, and so the inconsistency with his base at times when he's climbing this pocket affects how the ball is delivered and how far it goes and how accurate it is. Obviously if you turn your body as well, it affects the accuracy of it, and so sometimes he doesn't. And so honestly, there are just times where he is resigned to scrambling more so than keeping his eyes downfield. And sometimes he doesn't realize that until, oh shoot, there's a defender in front of me. Let me try to deliver this throw to somebody who's open real quick, and he's just not in a position to deliver a good throw. And so that's just being a little nitpicky here, but I think an 8 is a really good rating, here for somebody who does kind of struggle with some consistency issues, because I feel like for the most part he does do a good job climbing the pocket for the most part. All right, so there you go. That, I believe, is all the categories and all the grades and ratings I gave for each category. Overall, he grades out at a 75.2. Now, here, let me read off my comments real quick that I made here, because I did make some comments after this. But Sam, honestly, he has a lot of athletic gifts that makes him an ideal quarterback on the next level. A quarterback that you can mold into a couple different systems. You could run an RPO system with him, or a triple option system if that's your thing, honestly. Or you can mold him into a spread, air raid type of quarterback, because he does have the ability to throw, obviously, and he could run it as well, so you could take advantage of some of these looks that a spread offense would give defenses. But honestly, he does have some mechanical issues, specifically his consistency. Sometimes his mechanics are really good, and then other times it is god-awful horrible. I'm just gonna be 100% real with you, and I don't know why. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think maybe part of it is, the mental aspect of it, there's pressure, and whatnot, but honestly, he just needs to be consistent, and his timing needs to be improved if he wants to have a college career that lasts more than a year or two here. And honestly, there are a lot of other quarterbacks that are more consistent, that have ran more complicated offenses around the country. And I'm just going to be real. A lot of this is not his fault. And that is not something I say pretty much at all, But I know bad coaching when I see it. And I'm going to be honest, his coaching at TCA did not make the most out of his potential. Sadly, just going to be real, I feel like he's a lot closer to where he was when he first started as a sophomore than where he should be as a senior. And so, because of that, he's going to have to put in a lot of work on his own to continue to get better, to continue to get consistent, because just watching his gameplay, I'm giving an honest evaluation. College coaches listen to this, and so I'm not going to BS them and say something that I don't mean, but just giving an honest evaluation. He has talent, he's athletic, he has the ability to be a next level quarterback. Now, how far and how long it takes to tap into that ability and make sure that thing is running consistently, I don't know. He's going to probably need to be developed over a year or two. And as of right now, he does have an offer from McPherson. Here, let me double check this real quick here. Yeah, from McPherson College. I believe they're a D2. I thought he committed somewhere, but I don't see a commitment anywhere quite just yet. And so we'll see if he takes that offer or if he decides to go JUCO. But regardless, I think he's somebody that probably needs 1 or 2 years just to work on his game, honestly. But once he is polished and he's doing some of these things that I talked about consistently, he could be a D1 starter, honestly, probably FCS, to be honest with you. But he could be a D1, most likely a D2 starter for a lot of programs. I'm just going to be real with you. But he's going to need development. And so if he goes JUCO, he'll have 2 years there to develop, plus also college is cheaper there. And so he'll be able to focus on that, get that done, while also having, 2 more years to work on his game. And then when he gets out of JUCO, he'll have 2 or 3-ish years, to go from there to play. So 2 or 3 years of eligibility. And so we'll see what happens. But altogether, I think Sam, he's a gifted quarterback, but I think his biggest thing is just consistency. And a part of it, like I said, is his coaches at TCA. I don't think they passed enough with him. And I've said that over and over again. He did not attempt, I believe, over 20 passes in any game this season, which is wild because they blew out a lot of teams. And so that kind of just shows they relied a lot on Cade. But even then, I mean, I wish they passed him more. I wish they developed an actual passing offense with him more. And, you know, the sad part is that we've had, I'm just going to be real, on the podcast we've had gotten DMs saying, oh, well, they couldn't pass because of the quarterback. No, and I defend Sam too. Like, no, it's not because of that. They couldn't pass because they don't have a coaching staff that knows how to use a talented quarterback. And I'm going to stand by that a lot. And I'm being real critical here. And honestly, I would say this to these coaches' faces because I don't think they deserve to have the job they have right now, to be honest with you, because TCA has too much talent, like a Sam, like a Segovia, for them to go D2. For these excellent players to go D2. Even going farther than that, for this team to not even made it back to state. So, yeah, there you go. Let me get back to Sam, though. Like I said, talented quarterback. He's going to need some time to develop, you know. I think he has a lot of the athletic skill here to play on the next level. I don't really doubt that at all. And I don't think college coaches will doubt that at all if you look at his highlight reel. But if you look at whole games, there's definitely a little bit of a consistency issue. There's probably issues with him getting into rhythm as well. I wonder if he was to go to a good coaching staff, you know, on the next level, if they do a better job at getting him into rhythm. Because I think maybe some of these issues are more rhythm-based than like, oh, he just can't, like, you know, throw it on time, or he just can't make this play. I think some of the issues he went through were definitely rhythm-based, and just, you know, some of these coaches at TCA asking him to do some weird things at weird spots and putting a lot of unnecessary pressure on him. So yeah, but we'll see where he goes. Honestly, wishing him the best of luck. I think he's too talented to not play on the next level, and so I hope this doesn't discourage him, because I think he's a talented quarterback. And honestly, to have a 75 rating, even when I was pretty critical of some spots, shows that he has talent, you know. So yeah. But yeah, that'll actually wrap up this episode of the Playmakers Corner podcast. Thank you so much for listening to us. If you want to know when next episodes are going to drop, go ahead and follow us on social media. That's at Playmakers Corner on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also, go ahead and follow us on TikTok. We'll be putting some stuff out there. And then I'm also going to go ahead and plug my own TikTok, Coach Villanos. That's Coach, then Villanoz. I am posting TikToks of kind of just my adventures from around the state, you know, checking out players for PMC and all that stuff. And so check out for some bonus content there if you want to see that. And then go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube. We just hit over 70 subscribers, so I'm really appreciative of that. Thank you so much. And then on Twitch, follow us on Twitch, please. We're at 48. We're really, really close to affiliate. Once we get to affiliate, we could actually start making a little bit of income on this show, which we don't make any at all, and that's fine. You know, I'm happy to do it, but it would also be nice as all of us, you know, are definitely stretching ourselves out a little bit to make this work, plus work a couple full-time jobs here. So, you know, just keep that in mind. But we'd be really appreciative of it. I'm just gonna be real. We'd really appreciate it. So there you go. Yeah, and I mean, these next couple weeks we'll continue to do film breakdowns on Mondays and Wednesdays. Fridays will be reserved for women's flag football. This Friday, we got a banger. We're talking about the Sun Conference tournament, previewing the national tournament as well. So yeah, but thank you for rocking with us, and we'll catch you later.